Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. The political establishment that is trying to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled our country dry. The political establishment has brought about the destruction of our factories and our jobs as they flee to Mexico, China, and other countries all around the world. It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again. Our movement.
Oh, hello, welcome back to Inform New Hampshire. My name's Rich Merritt, your host. A couple quick things. President Trump didn't mean what he just said. There's nothing wrong in America. But I would like to ask him if he would pardon Jerry DeLemus, because he's an innocent man sitting in prison for almost 3 years. Next month will be 3 years. And the only thing he did was stand up for his rights and the rights of others. Secondly, the National Liberty Alliance is still attempting to get money to send out these books to the sheriffs across the country so that they can become informed instead of clueless like they are. And thirdly, I just wanted to mention, because I'll probably forget it if I don't, the Inform New Hampshire, we just started a web page. It's still a work in progress, but it's hopefully going to be extremely informative, and I'll get to the reason why in a minute. But go to www.informnewhampshire.com and check it out. See if you like it or not. With me today is my guest, usual guy, Dan Richard, and I want to say a couple things about Dan. Number one, he's a world-class dog trainer and breeder. So anybody out there listening to this, if you have issues or problems with your dog and you want to get in touch with Dan, you can send your an email to us on the email address on the screen, and I'll forward it to Dan. Secondly, I've known Dan for almost 3 years now and worked very closely with him during that time. And I can tell you that he's the foremost authority in the state of New Hampshire on the Constitution. That's my opinion. I consider him a constitutional scholar, one who did not or is not a member of the bar, to his credit. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Richie, for having me today.
having you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and this show is about, putting it mildly, it's about the slavery that we all consent to unknowingly in the federal government. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dan, and he can get the ball rolling.
Very good, very good. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in today. I want to expose how you, through fraudulent inducement, agree to the tyranny that we are all oppressed under. And it comes by 5 ways. It comes by you consenting to a Social Security number, you consenting to a driver's license, you consenting to a voter registration, a bank account, and a passport. Now, when I say consent, I'm referring to being a federal citizen and being a resident without knowing what those mean. I'd like to share with the audience something I've prepared for this presentation. This is written as an affidavit. The State Division of Motor Vehicles operation, and existence is repugnant and contrary to the Constitution of New Hampshire. The state, spelled with a lowercase s, DMV, operates by fraudulent inducement. Said agency's operation commits 6 acts of fraud on the citizens of the state of New Hampshire and is deprivation of rights under color of law. The allegations are: 1. The state DMV commits common law criminal conversion when it alters the style of a man or a woman's name from John Henry Doe to John Henry Doe, all capitalized. 2. The constitutional definition of state has never been amended. The legislature cannot change the definition of state by amending the constitutional definition by use of statutes. 3. The state of New Hampshire is the lowercase state of New Hampshire is a territory of the United States, and the DMV is a possession of the District of Columbia. And I'll prove it to you. 4. The state DMV requirement to be a United States citizen constitutes fraudulent inducement. Number 5. The state DMV requirement to be a resident is fraudulent inducement. Number 6. The state DMV requirement to submit a Social Security number is fraudulent inducement. Lastly, these 6 items, number 7, each of the previous 6 acts are used to traffic the people, the inhabitants, citizens of the state of New Hampshire, from a state jurisdiction to a jurisdiction foreign to our state constitution, into federal jurisdiction, posing as a state agency with no constitutional authority, disclosure, or consent to the people. Folks, once you wrap your head around what we're presenting to you today, you should be very upset. We're now dealing with organized crime. Organized crime from the top on down. Who's protecting these people? Who is currently working to conspire to deprive you of your rights and subject you to statutes, rules, and regulations foreign to our Constitution? That should be very, very upsetting to all listening to this presentation.
Can I interrupt, Dan?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to make one comment to the people listening, because you probably don't know this. And both myself and Dan have been there. We were ignorant. But ignorance is the cause of the problem. It's because we volunteer into this unknowingly. Okay? And that's the reason why they're trafficking us through a system. It's organized crime. It's been going on for 100 years. So when you were born and you were brought into it, you accept it as normal. It is far from normal. It's totally wrong. And I wanted to make sure that you understood that. It's our ignorance of the police, of the general public. I'm not going to get into the police, the general public, and a lot of politicians who don't know the difference. The judges and the bar members, they understand perfectly. At least in my estimation.
Well, they are the deep state. They're the ones. How many times has everyone heard, ignorance of the law is no excuse? You mean to tell me that the men and women who've spent their lives studying the law, practicing law, and are sworn an oath to protect our state and federal constitution somehow don't know this stuff? It's implausible. It's ridiculous. In fact, they are the deep state, and this is all for their profit. This is why the Founding Fathers wrote the brilliant Right of Revolution. And they use the word ought. Ought, in other words, that there's a social responsibility that you and all of us are required to stand up to the corruption. And it all begins with education. So let's start with step 1. Once I became aware that the government alters the style of your name from your signature, that given by your parents / your Christian name if you are a Christian, and altering that style and capitalizing it into all capital letters. Well, after a lot of research, I came to the understanding of exactly what the legal ramifications of doing so are. It's the creation of a registered trade name. The state, lowercase state, which has a statutory definition, is then used, your all-caps signature is then used to create a registered agent for service of process, in other words, a legal fiction, that created by the state so that you can interface with a corporate government. And so upon making that discovery, I made several steps to, quote, correct the public record. First thing I did was acquire the registered trade name as it appears on my naturalization certificate with the Secretary of State's office. If you go to the Secretary of State's office, everyone listening can do the same. You apply for the same all capitalized name that appears either on your birth certificate, naturalization certificate, or any other legal documents that's referred to as your legal name. And you can buy that name for $52. It's a registered trade name, and it'll be used for step 2. I then took that instrument to the Court of Probate. I filed a petition with the Court of Probate and to correct my legal name. And upon presenting my certificate of live birth, I'm foreign born in Canada, my baptismal certificate, my naturalization certificate, and my registered trade name to the judge looked at me and asked me, I don't see the name change difference. And I pointed it out to her because on my naturalization certificate, it starts with my signature and 2 inches below it. Once my naturalization certificate was mailed to my home, the name was altered, but I didn't get it at the time. I was only 17. They changed it to the all capitalized spelling. And then the judge looked up at me and she said, I get it. That all capitalized name isn't you. Because if it was, you'd have to sign your name in all capital letters. So I took that document, and there's an instruction booklet. And women especially understand this concept. Women who get married and have a name change, you're required to go back to those 5 entities. Social Security, your driver's license, your voter registration, your bank account, and your passport. You're required to change your name. Your legal name has now been changed. Well, I went ahead and did so, and I went to the Division of Motor Vehicles, brought all my documents, including a court order. And guess what they did? They refused. Now, need to back up just 1 second and point out a secondary issue. Article 8 in the Bill of Rights in New Hampshire Constitution has a statute written pursuant thereof called 91A. It's called the Right to Know Law. The Right to Know Law is a means by which you can request public records. Now, I filed a 91A, Article 8 petition with the director of DMV, Elizabeth Bilecki. And I put to her 3 questions, and don't you know, she ignored all 3 questions, refused to answer the question, under what authority does any agent of state government have to alter the style of your name to traffic your person, into a jurisdiction foreign to your Constitution? Refused to answer the question. Now they're in contempt of court. I filed another 91A, which gets me into the second subject, which is state citizenship. Upon filing a 91A with the DMV, now I get the legal counsel for the Department of Safety to answer the response. Of course, he refuses to answer the question. And the question basically was this: under what authority does the lowercase state DMV require that citizens of the state be federal U.S. citizens, 14th Amendment statutory citizens, in order to exercise their right to travel? He refused to answer the question, so back and forth. And so now we have item number 3. In other words, their refusal. Their silence, it tells you everything you need to know by the fact that they don't want to answer the questions.
I have a question for you. Are you sure that the legal counsel didn't respond to you? Reason I'm asking is Article 8 in the state constitution, accountability, says all officers are responsive to the people at all times. So he ignored that law?
Not only did he ignore it, what he did is he played a typical lawyer game. He ignored, because in my paperwork I always cite the Constitution first, Article 8, Bill of Rights, Part 1, and then 91A, which is the statute written pursuant. And of course, he reversed his response and only addressed the 91A. He ignored Article 8 that says all officers and agents all officers and public officials are our agents and delegates, and at all times accountable to us and are supposed to be responsive to our request. And of course, he ignored that and then used the excuse that I'm seeking legal counsel. So I went back and forth, I responded to him, and of course he didn't respond back. So now we'll see them in court. Let them answer to the judge, both at the state level, at the federal level. We'll get to that next.
Just one quick one. So you're saying that the lawyer, a member of the bar, ignored the law?
Exactly.
Okay.
In
Just wanted to
writing.
clear that up.
In writing.
Okay.
All right. The next part we need to get to is something that we should be marching on the State House tomorrow after going public with this information. I want to share with you the statute, because if I couldn't prove this, I wouldn't be saying it on television or saying it anywhere in public unless this was a fact. This is statute, New Hampshire RSA 21:4, Title 1, the state and its government, Chapter 21, Statutory Construction. State spelled with a capital S, semicolon, United States spelled properly. And here's the sentence. The word, quote, lowercase s state, when applied to different parts of the United States, comma, stop. Who does the application? I submit to you it's lawyers and judges who decide to just traffic your person for their profit and emolument. The next, may extend to and include the District of Columbia and the several territories, so called. And the words United States shall include the districts and territories. Well, I'll say it again. Who gets to do the extending? Again, this is statutory construction, because once they write this into public policy, they write this wonderful little gem called the Driver's License Compact. Statute, New Hampshire Statute RSA 263:77. Now remember, ignorance of the law is no excuse. What are these people doing? Title 11, Motor Vehicles, Chapter 263, Driver's License Compact, Section 263:77, Article 2, Definitions. Here we go, folks. Ready? As used in this compact, state means a lowercase state, territory or possession of the United States, the District of Columbia, or the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. Folks, it couldn't be any more clear than that. The state constitution has never been amended. The definition of the word state is spelled out quite clearly in Article 1, the Bill of Rights, under state sovereignty. It's also spelled out in great specificity in Article 1 of Part 2, Form of Government, where it states that state, because it's a proper noun, is referring to the people of the state. They have no constitutional authority to alter the definition by statute and violate the amendment process, because that's exactly what they've done. They've totally violated your consent. Nobody in the state, no citizen of this state ever consented. And I'll tell you one more thing. I like to count words. And I discovered that the Office of Legislative Services, I suspect is the primary agent that has done this because they have the statutory authority to do so, has altered the state constitution 96 times and changed the state to a lowercase state. And you'll be really happy to find out that your governor has signed an oath to the lowercase state in direct violation of Article 41, his mandate as to how his office and his title is to be styled. And that is a capital S state and a capital G government. Now, I will tell you something else about lawyers. Not all lawyers are bad, but this much is true. Their minor in law school is English. Why do you think I hire a lawyer for your probate and your wills and your estates and any other legal documents, contract law? Why? Because they're experts at punctuation, English grammar, syntax, and so I don't want to hear that, oh, this is a mistake. This is not a mistake. The proof is in the statute I just read to you.
Just let me add two things, Danny. Ignorance is no excuse to the law. That goes for attorneys and judges, too, or members of the bar. Secondly, I just wanted to say, because you were talking about amending and changing and whatnot, there's only two ways to change the Constitution that the people ratified, because it belongs to the people. It's their law.
Right.
And that's through a constitutional convention or to have a referendum put before the people for them to vote on to change the Constitution. It cannot be done by statute, as Dan says. Article 5 in the Part 2 is very clear on that. So I just wanted to point that out.
No, absolutely, Richie. And on to the next allegation, and that is the word resident. The word resident only appears one time in the 1784 Constitution, and that's in Article 5, Part 2, Form of Government. The word resident exists in 1784, and it is not used in the Bill of Rights. and it is used in direct contradistinction to the word inhabitant. In Article 4, Part 2, Form of Government, the article before the one I just cited, it says the inhabitants and those residing. In other words, there are two different entities. They're identifying that there are two entities who can live in the state. Citizens of the state and those that are here temporarily that are residents. And then back to Article 5, Part 2, that the inhabitants and the residents are subject to our taxation and the rest of the other description. Again, reaffirming that resident, and I'm going to point out two other places that verify this. The Naturalization Act from day one, the 1790 Naturalization Act to today, will tell you that if you are a resident, you're a resident alien. Who hid the word alien from the citizens of the state? I think you got a pretty good idea by now who was up to no good. But the point is that the federal government describes a resident as an alien. And your favorite friend in the world, the IRS. The IRS will do the same thing. They'll refer to you as a resident alien. If you are a resident alien, you are subject to federal jurisdiction. Why do I know this so well? In the 60s, my parents immigrated from 100 miles from here, from Sherbrooke, Canada, and I acquired a green card through my parents. And that green card left me as a resident, a permanent legal resident alien in New Hampshire until I met the residency requirement. What my parents did, they became citizens of the state. Then I became a citizen of the state when I applied at 17. So this is the verification of the definition of resident. Yet you keep consenting to be a resident and a federal citizen. And we'll get on to the driver's license application when I get done with this. So that is the reason why you never, ever, ever want to consent to being a resident. The constitutional definition of resident is dwelleth and hath a home. And don't you know, the lawyers and the Bar Association have tried to remove all reference, yet it's still there, especially if you do your research and you know where to look. But the point is that by submitting to new legal definitions, listen, folks, Richie and I will confess we're not any smarter than anybody else. We've just gotten to be aware and awake.
We went back to school.
We went back to school and figured this out by reading the text and the language and figured out, man, they lied to us. They told us all about the federal government, the Federal Bill of Rights, and the average person is unaware that your rights, your 39 civil rights protected by the state constitution, only apply to the inhabitants and the citizens of the state. So as soon as you consent to it, you're now consenting to federal jurisdiction. So, next, the last one. The requirement of the lowercase state DMV for Social Security number for identification is a violation of federal law. Bet you didn't know that either, because every one of their brothers seems to ask you for your Social Security number. The problem is, again, we're unaware that we're unaware. Our government and our school system and our public education system has completely failed, not by accident, by design, to keep us good little ignorant taxpayers to just keep going along to get along and not get in trouble. So I want to make an important point here on that. This is the federal law. Section 7 of the Privacy Act, disclosure of Social Security number, provides that, quote, it shall be unlawful for any federal, state, or local government agency to deny to any individual any right, benefit, or privilege provided by law because of such of an individual's refusal to disclose his Social Security account number. Try that today. Try that with the DMV first time you go get a driver's license. And I close with this section on this point. It shall be unlawful, I read you the federal statute, but I wanted to make the point that the answer gets into the argument side of things. So please let me gather my things. Richie, take over for a minute.
Yeah, well, I lost where you were. So that's
we're
okay.
on Social Security number, and I want to show you why the DMV is a federal agency, because only federal legislation has exempted their franchises, the lowercase state, to be exempt from it, to control you.
Well, one of the things that Dan didn't touch upon, or at least I don't think he did, was when you sign for your driver's license or your Social Security or any of these things, when your mother signs the birth certificate, according to the government, and I disagree with this, by the way, lawfully I disagree with it, the government claims that you're entering into a contract and that you're giving away your child on the birth certificate, or for your driver's license, you're accepting everything. Well, the reason that I'm disagreeing lawfully is because there's no full disclosure, nor is there any consent. They're being tricked into it. And when the judges who stand before us, or stand up above us, I should say, sit around and say, well, ignorance is no excuse for the law. Well, they should remember that, because it's my belief that they may be prosecuted in the near future for what they're doing. They're a lawyer who's operating in the bar, okay, and he might not know what's going on. He is as guilty as the people who do know what's going on, because ignorance is no excuse for the law. Well, if it isn't, and they're the ones telling us this, how can they be excused for their ignorance? They're guilty. They're guilty. And anybody that would come in front of me as a member of the jury, I'd be telling them that.
All right, I'll close out quickly. If you had any doubts that the state DMV was a possession of the United States corporation, let this sink in. The Tax Reform Act of 1976, 42 U.S.C., and the numbers that go with it, expressly exempts lowercase state agencies from this restriction, to the extent that the Social Security numbers are used in the administration of any tax, general public assistance, driver's license, or motor vehicle registration law within its jurisdiction. And you'll find this definition under the federal judiciary, under federal debt collection procedure. What I just say, the Tax Reform Act, why do you think they've exempted themselves for controlling you? And under definitions, the United States means a federal corporation. And the last but not least is James Madison, 1787, in convention in Philadelphia, said this. This comes from the records of the Federal Convention. The U.S. shall be forever considered as one body, corporate and politic in law, entitled to all the rights and privileges and immunities which to bodies corporate do and ought to appertain. This is cited on pages 341, 342, 335 of the convention records. Folks, thank you for your time today. Like I said, this is the beginning of the exit for the Matrix. And right here, anyone who doubts me, go to DMV. Look up your form, someone who's applying for the first driver's license. They're going to tell you right here, are you a United States citizen? Are you a resident? You consent because you need a driver's license.
Do not check it off. You are an inhabitant. You're not a resident. Please spare yourself of that. You don't have to put down what they tell you to put down. You put down what you are. You're proclaiming yourself. The only other thing I want to say is, unless are you all set, Dan? Okay. The only thing I want to wrap up with is go to Facebook and like us. Go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel, Inform New Hampshire. Share it, please. The other thing is to go to our website. It's brand new. It's a work in progress. And by the way, one of the things I didn't say, Dan is going to be a contributor to the information and the law section on the website. When he gets situated, there's little things going on with his life right now, but it'll be squared away, and you can check out his point of view on the law. It's time for us in the state of New Hampshire and America to understand that the day of ignorance has got to end. You just heard at the beginning of the show President Trump tell us about the organized crime ring that's running the world. It's a war against good and evil. What side do you want to be on? If you want to be on the side of evil, sit on your ass. If you want to be on the side of good, take a stand. Thank you for watching, and please share this.
Welcome to the revolution, folks.